Hello, everybody. I am Dr. EJ Johnson. If you are not familiar with me, thank you for watching this video first off. And I want to say that this video is really, it's a gift. It's a labor of love, something that I want to share because the LA fires are very near and dear to my heart, as I know they are for many. I'm a native Los Angeleno, and it's devastating to me to see the beautiful cities and towns and roads and places where I grew up devastated in these fires, and also to see my neighbors and friends and loved ones experience the devastation of losing their homes and businesses and basically losing a sense of self, which is what happens when trauma occurs. And so I decided to do this little informational class to offer some relief to those who may be experiencing this feeling of helplessness or trauma or depression, or even anxiety about what's going on in the world. And here's the thing about experiencing these emotions is that even though you may not be directly impacted, like maybe your house didn't burn down, or maybe you're not even in the state of California, you could be just looking at this from afar and still be impacted. And we're all human beings, and human beings have feelings, and that's what makes us beautiful and unique. And that's really one of the things that connects us all. And so, even if you're looking at this from around the world and your heart hurts or aches at what you see, um, that just symbolizes that you're connected, and you're connected to the energy that connects us all, which is really what makes the beautiful thread that connects us all as human beings. And so I decided to share some information around trauma. Now, even though it says doctor in front of my name, I am not a medical professional, and you should get professional medical attention if you're wrestling with uh, mental health challenges. It's always advised that you get support from a medical professional uh, if you're dealing with severe mental health conditions or challenges, or dark thoughts around your mental health. So I want to just preface by saying that. And I want to offer uh, some knowledge around trauma, and it's specifically natural disasters, because that's what I'm faced with right now, and what a lot of the country is faced with, whether it's hot or cold, right? Because there are extreme weather cases on one side of the United States, and then there is a different set of extreme conditions on the other side. So, the purpose of this is to really just provide information around dealing with trauma and how you can navigate granting yourself grace and starting to heal from the trauma that you may be witnessing, experiencing, or feel connected to. Uh, I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough is that as human beings, we have these feelings, we have this connectedness that we can either acknowledge or deny. It's there. When we place our attention on it, it becomes stronger. We feel others, we feel what happens with others. We have more things that we can tap into and feel. So the more open you are, the more available you are to the emotions, to your emotional intelligence, the more you will feel, whether or not it is directly impacting you or not. And so There's reasons why you may look at the news and your heart hurts, or you just simply feel as if, you you have such deep levels of empathy for someone when you can actually just see what's going on, and it impacts you in a very, very real way. So I want to acknowledge that just means that you're open, and it's a beautiful thing to be open. But there are also some tools that you can implement and integrate into your life that helps make that openness uh, easier at times, and allows you to sort of garner controlling those emotions from time to time. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And I do have something to share. So I'm going to just share my screen here. So I made this graphic on napkin.ai. If you haven't used napkin.ai, side note, has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, but it's a great online tool, and it's absolutely free. But I made this little document here that I want to talk about, and it's really about, I targeted this to talk about navigating trauma, um, specifically when it comes to natural disasters. There's something around trauma that occurs at the hand of another person, right? You can experience traumatic events that involve other people, maybe your response to how an action of another person or behavior or condition that you've been placed in by someone else. That is one way, one version of trauma, or one experience of trauma. But there's a different experience of trauma is that happens when it is a natural disaster. And one of the unique things about it being a natural disaster is there's no one to blame, right? Like, who do you blame the when it's a natural disaster? It's like it's in contracts, there's usually something called a force majeure, which allows a contract to be exited by parties involved in the contract when there's a force of nature, an act of God that prevents the contract from being executed. Well, the reason that clause in a contract is so important, and it really, really makes both parties exempt from being held responsible for their end of the deal, right? Because who would be responsible for a act of nature, right? A force of God, a force of nature. And so whatever you call the energy that created all of us, I call it the creator, or sometimes the universe, whatever you call it, it we always say that it is responsible for natural disasters. So there really is no, like, who do you point the finger to? Right? When you have a traumatic event occur that involves another person, there's a clear person to blame. Right? There is someone over there that we can point the finger to. Now, I'm not advocating for judgment or blame on anything or anyone, but I'm saying that it is a natural human response to look for something, someone to place the responsibility and blame on. And so trauma that occurs from a natural disaster often leaves us feeling like there's a play that was pretty popular. I can't remember when, but maybe in the 80s or 90s. And the name of the play was My Arms Are Too Short to Box with God. And when we're looking to blame someone in the case of a natural disaster, our arms are really too short to box with God. It's like we can blame the entity that created us all for this natural disaster, but it leaves us feeling a little bit unsettled, if you will, depending on your own beliefs and your own faith. It can leave you feeling incongruent with that need to look for the cause or the blame or the place to place responsibility or blame. And so that's, to me, is one of the distinguishing things about trauma that uh, follows a natural disaster, is that we're left with this void of being able to find the person or the culprit. And even if we know a natural disaster is a force majeure and act of God, there's something about us that doesn't want to place blame on the creator that creates us all, right? There's just, it doesn't feel good. And so it leaves us with this sort of hole that never gets filled, and these inquiries about why and how and why me, and it can often have us um, feeling anxiety and stress and uncertainty around if it will happen again, or how can we move forward, right? It often places barriers in our mental structures, constructs of as to how we can move forward, or how we can move on, or continue a life beyond this experience, because we're left feeling uncertain. And so uh, there's a couple of things. There are three things that we're going to talk about today in this video, um, around dealing with natural disasters and the trauma that we get to navigate in the aftermath of that. And at the time of recording this, the fires here in Los Angeles are actually still burning. It's been a week. It's been literally a week, exactly a week since they started, and they are still very much burning. And there are still communities and neighborhoods and businesses and homes that are very much in jeopardy and even burning as we speak. But my prayers and heart goes out to all the firefighters, first responders, volunteers, everybody out there who have raised the level of beauty when it comes to heroism, leadership, and humanity by doing the work that they do. And while it pales in comparison, this is what I do to contribute. And so it's the very reason I'm doing this video. So if I get a little choked up, I'm not going to apologize for it. It only means I'm human, and I'm experiencing the feelings that we'll probably be talking about here. So navigating the aftermath of natural disasters. And, this document, I will link it in the description for this video. You can download it, and please share it with others. Please share this video with others that you think may be able to benefit. I'm not going to read everything that's on this document because I wrote it. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase and share. But if you really want to dive into this, it's great. I created this for you as a resource, and it's yours to have. So, navigating the aftermath of a natural disaster, there's a couple of key things we're going to discuss. The first thing is that we know that trauma occurs, right? There is just something about the upheaval of our lives taking us, it's kind of like that snatching the rug out from under our feet. There's a traumatic incident that has occurred, and it kind of creates this prism of possibilities, right? We can go in many directions. Trauma can take us in many directions, but there are some distinct topics that I want us to discuss tonight. The first is the psychological impact of the trauma of a natural disaster, and how that impacts us in a very real way as far as our sense of belongingness and community. And then we're going to talk a little bit about community support and how community support really, I believe, is catalyst to that rebuild process happening that is inevitable. And then we'll talk about some individual coping strategies that we can put in place, practices we can put in place to heal ourselves and to support others who may be having a tougher time navigating. So let's quickly dive into understanding trauma. Trauma, something happens. Something happens. And it may be something happened that to you, around you, near you. In this case, and I'm specifically talking about the fires, it happened in an experience, in a communal experience, right? There is, lots of indicators of emergency responses that are happening all over the place. There are news reports, sirens everywhere, smoke in the air, flames shooting up in the sky, right? Images of communities where people have thrived and can thrive no longer, right? And then you add the additional component of social media and scrolling to see image after image after image after image of traumatic scenes, right? So it's like a nonstop 24-hour in your face movie that you cannot get away from, especially if, and I'll admit, like me, you want to know, like the magnitude, right? That's our curiosity. Our natural curiosity is to want to know the magnitude of what's happening. And if you're local, you want to know if you're in jeopardy. So you're looking for that information as well. Well, all of this information gets fed into our mental system. And I should say here that we all have, kind of like 4 systems. There is a spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical system. And that spiritual system is everything in the paradigms that we cannot see with our natural eyes. And then you have the mental system, that is our thoughts, our internal dialogue, our conversation. It is our memory. It is our creativity. And then you have the emotional, which often the emotional and the mental live very close to each other, right? Because if there's a mental upset, the emotions kick right in and it sort of starts acting out what the mental state is sending it. And the last to be the example of everything that's going on is the physical state. So our physical beingness, the space in which we reside physically. And so when we're watching the news and we're watching these images and we're looking outside and seeing smoke and we see flames and we see communities and streets that are no more, and we see all of this trauma and you see the pain on people's faces that have lost everything, or maybe you are the person who lost everything and you can't get away from it. It's there all always in your face, at least for, in this case, the last 7 days. And when you look at your outlet of social media, every other post is about it. Either it's come get supplies, or go volunteer, or look, this is what it used to look like, and now this is what it looks like, and we can't get this fire out, and here's an emergency alert system coming on your phone. When you have all of this input coming in with the same trauma, trauma triggers a mental response that triggers us to protect ourselves. It's either protection, fleeing, it gets anchored, and then an emotional state arises, like anxiety, fear, depression, frustration, you name it, grief. It all starts to manifest in the emotional state. And I'll be transparent here. I've had this experience myself. I said early on that I'm a native Los Angeles, born and raised, lived here all my life. And some of the streets of Altadena and Pasadena I've visited, which is one of the main areas. I've played there, lived there, had fun there, had friends, family there. From driving Pacific Coast Highway, which is on the Pacific Palisades side, I've played there, had fun there, and it's all my city. And so in looking at all these images, I'm like, that restaurant is never going to be there. I'm never going to be able to go there again. I'll never see the sunset or the sunrise the exact same way anymore. I don't even know if that part of the beach is accessible or even available anymore, right? So there's all this emotion that comes up, and then your mental is constantly being inundated with these images, stimulating a new emotion, even are anchoring the traumatic or trauma-riddled emotion even more. And so a great example of this is the Pixar movie Inside Out 2. And if you've never seen this movie, please, 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 if you care anything about your own mental health and well-being and that of your children or a young person in your life, please have them watch this movie. Both movies, Inside Out 1 and 2, they're amazing. But one of the things in that movie was we were dealing with a young girl who was going into puberty, and she developed a new set of emotions, one of them being anxiety. And what would happen is anxiety would run a play. I'm paraphrasing here, but it would run the same play over and over and over again. It never could see a solution, or it never could get space around the challenge that it kept presenting for itself. And so when we watch media that is traumatizing and we talk about it over and over again, and we relive those emotions over and over again, it's like running that same play, and our emotional system takes on that, and it just does it automatically. If we do it for so long, it'll just take over and keep that same emotional state running, even when your mind has moved on. Your mind can experience joy now or happiness, but your emotional state might not be able to catch up with it. So when we're experiencing these traumas in this particular situation, when it comes to natural disaster, that psychological response from being inundated with all of these images that are super traumatic manifest a trauma response in the emotional state. And it can it can bring up these feelings of incongruence and maybe even helplessness or fear, or frustration, you name it, anger, sadness, fear, guilt, all of them, right? And even start to highlight or tap into deeper psychological disorders like anxiety, depression, and PTSD. And so trauma is very real. And I'm only talking about trauma at the emotional level. There's a whole nother level, which is physical, where it gets anchored in parts of our body and then manifests in the way of dis-ease in our body, right? And so it's important that you have this information so that you can take care of yourself. This is what self-care is. This is what granting grace is to have the awareness to be able to do something, to curtail it, to transform it, and to remain grounded in what is healthy and wealthy and harmonious, so that your states, your emotional system, your mental system, your physical system can be an accurate representation of the perfection of your spiritual system, which doesn't waver. It is always operating at optimal state. It's the mental and emotional and physical that get impacted by our humanness and the trauma that we see. So the psychological impact is, when we're faced with disasters like this, is to immediately do something, right? To immediately take action, to immediately get inundated with all this information to find out if we're on track. And I'm in no way saying that you shouldn't be informed. And I'll talk about this in a minute. It's about finding balance in the information, because we're at a place where information is on overload. So it's easy to become overwhelmed by all of the stories, and even more the conspiracy theorists that come out and share what they think. And then, it's just so much that keeps us in that emergency response state, keeping the mental constantly thinking about this, creating these pictures in our head, and the emotional system just lining up with that and starts running that play automatically, which keeps us in a state of emotional distress. So, I want to talk about the role of community support. One of the big, big disparities that happens in a natural disaster is feeling separation, right? Feeling distracted. I mean, like separated from the tribe, if you will. And this was experienced a lot during the pandemic, being so isolated from people and needing to be that way because of contagiousness. But that can happen in a natural disaster as well, especially when you lose everything in your immediate community, right? One of the things I can remember, a very traumatic experience for me as a kid, was our my childhood home caught on fire. The bathroom caught on fire, and it was because someone threw like a Molotov cocktail inside the bathroom window, and it caught on fire. And so I can remember feeling this feeling of violation, like just violated, like my space as a kid. I was only like 6 or 7. I can remember this vividly, that we had to move out because of the smoke. And just imagine that the folks who are dealing with this today, like what if your house didn't burn down? You still couldn't live in it because the smoke has taken over, right? The whole house is violated. Your sacred space has been violated. And so this sense of belonging feels disjointed, and we can feel isolated even when we're around a lot of people, right? Because the isolation happens inside, where we make the assessment that no one can experience the fact that I have lost things that are precious to me, like identity that is precious to me, which happens when we experience loss. And so community is important, but community done in a very supportive, loving, grace filled, nurturing way. Community that allows people to be, allows folks to grieve and experience this situation in the way that they need to experience it, which looks different for everyone. Um, Support and assistance, which here in Los Angeles, it's been amazing because there are so many places that are like, hey, we have enough volunteers, we have enough donations of stuff. We can give you detailed list of the things that we do need, but please ask us first. Like, there's been this great outpouring of support, and that assistance is powerful. It gives us a sense of hope, a sense of community, a sense of connectedness that is essential to our healing. It also provides a space for camaraderie and emotional connection and support. And, a lot of the volunteer centers there are volunteers that are volunteering who have literally lost their entire home. And they just want to be useful and doing something. That's what I've heard. And what I've heard the volunteers saying is that they want to do something to give back, even though they can't even process that their own home is no longer. And this is probably a part of the grieving process, to stay active so you don't have to kind of really deal with that yet. And that's perfectly fine. Everyone will deal with it in their own time. But there's something about unifying that is healing and tribal, and I think innate to who we are in wanting that sense of connection. Establishing support networks is essential, like in early stages. Like, you don't have to go this alone. And, getting the resources and support and encouraging open dialogue around this is these are some of the ways that we can heal faster. Like, I know this is not over. We're still in the middle of this. And at the same time, we can start the healing process now. And we can do that by encouraging conversation and allowing folks to have the space to converse and to express themselves fully and authentically about what they're going through, what their perspective is. So, coping strategies for individuals. Acknowledge what you're feeling. This is always a powerful thing. Don't try to suppress it. Don't try to ignore it. Don't try to get rid of it. Don't try to put a brave face on. Acknowledge it. Acknowledging takes it almost deflates the balloon a little bit, right? If it's a balloon and your emotions are tied up in a balloon, the moment you acknowledge it, there's a little air that creeps out. It takes it down just a little bit. And so acknowledging it also, it names it, and it takes a little bit of the hold that it may have on you and just loosens it a little bit. And that's all we're asking for, just incremental space happening around it. And so one of the best gifts you could give yourself is to just acknowledge when and where and how you feel. And, I experienced this myself over the last week. I had to just sit down somewhere and really acknowledge that I was grieving, that I am grieving, and be okay with that, because it's human. It's a part of who I am. It makes me who I am. It symbolizes the love and care that I have for humanity. It symbolizes the love and care that I have for these communities that have been devastated, for the people in them, and for what they stand for. And so it's quite all right to have an emotion. It's not all right to deny those emotions. The cycle of emotional processing is to acknowledge your feelings, allow yourself the space to feel them, to grieve them, to process your experiences. And, grief has many stages, right? 6, I believe it is. Allow yourself to go through those stages. Don't rush it. Don't force it. Just let it. And, create a network, a community, a support system that nurtures, empowers, and celebrates that. Because, the last thing you want, I would think, is for those unprocessed emotions, remember running the same program over and over again, to start to manifest in a very physical way. In that physical way of disease being made manifest as a result of those emotions not being properly experienced and processed. So please, please, please give yourself that space and be that space for others. Be the space where others can share and process their emotions. So, how to cope? Stay informed. I'm not saying deny getting the necessary information you need to be informed, because you're human, you're curious, I'm curious, we all are. Get the information you need and decipher that information between just opinions and really knowledgeable, well-informed, well-discerned information, so that you're not inundated with everybody's opinions and conspiracy theories, but you're really informed with the information you need to powerfully move forward. And then practice self-care. And that self-care is allowing yourself this time to process, acknowledging your feelings, making sure you have community support, building and creating your own community support, and acknowledging where you stand, where you are in your feelings. I put here limit exposure to media because media has its own set of traumatic inducing abilities. And so, just avoid the miscommunication, the misinformation, and sensationalized news. And really look for striking a balance with what you allow in. What mental pictures do you allow in, or do you allow to stay in? And make sure that you get informed, educated information that is needed. Sometimes, we can get information from all these different media sources, and media sources could be your cousin calling to give you some information that you totally don't need, but it starts a mental process that sends you on an emotional roller coaster, right? It could come in from the people you love the most, but you have to be responsible for your own self-care, your own mental health and well-being, and be careful what you let in, who you let in, what information you let in, right? Because the objective here is to come out of this whole, healthy, mentally, emotionally, physically healthy. And while there may be bumps along the way in that process because of what we're dealing with and what you're faced with, the idea here is to heal along the way. Like there's a thing where, my mom would say, you gotta cook and clean at the same time. So as you use the dish or you finish preparing the food, as you're preparing, you're washing the dishes at the same time. Well, this traumatic experience is not unlike that. As you're faced with more mind movies that trigger traumatic responses, our job to remain as healthy as possible is to process those things as we go. So we're washing the dishes along the way. It's like process those emotions so that they're not running these patterns on automatic. Because what happens at that point is long after this is over, those patterns are still running. But if we can continue to wash the dishes along the way, we won't end up with a lot of baggage on the other side of this that attaches to our physical well being and then causes disease in our physical experience. And so, this is my love note to anybody who needed to hear this, whether you're here in Los Angeles or around the world. I just want to say thank you for watching this video, and please do share it with someone you think could benefit from it. And hopefully you found something in this that uh, is helpful. You can download the document that I was sharing. There's some more information there for you. The link is below this video. I just want to say peace and blessings to you. Please remain safe, healthy, joy-filled, and be good to each other. Thank you, and bye for now. Oh, I almost forgot. As a result of wanting to support the fire survivors, so I don't want to call them victims, they're fire survivors. I am doing a Elevate Your Year workshop where we will walk through a process of really laying out the foundation for an amazing year. It's a one-day live event. It is $55 to attend, and the proceeds will go to help the LA fire survivors. You can learn more about Elevate Your Year at the link you see right here at the bottom of the screen. There'll also be the link inside of the description for this video. I'd love to have you. The live event is January 25th, 2025, and the proceeds will go to benefit the LA fire survivors. I thank you for your support. Thank you for considering this, and I look forward to seeing you there. Peace and blessings.